Hello, friends. I'm Nicole Song, and this is the School of Self Worth. Today's topic is about something I've been hearing about from so many of you: pressure. Yeah, that's right, pressure. The pressure to perform at work, the pressure to be a good mom, the pressure to be a good partner, a good daughter. The list goes on and on. And so I have a bit of a controversial take on it. And so I'm pretty excited to share more about pressure with all of you today. And I decided to just put together a really special episode around it, the causes for it, specifically for Asian American women, which are not the same as they are for everyone else. And really also the exact reason why the pressure is getting to you. So, before we get started, if you are an Asian American woman who wants to reverse negative cultural conditioning so that you can make clear, confident decisions and thrive in your life, I have something for you. So, go over to my Instagram at Nicole Song and DM me powerful, and I'll send it over to you. All right, friends, let's dig into this juicy, fun conversation. Okay, we are here to talk about pressure. This topic, it comes up really consistently, I find, for clients and women I'm talking to about where they're struggling the most. And I also hear it, all the time from like my own clients who are working to move past it. And whenever they're telling me they feel a lot of pressure in general, it reminds me of a balloon. Like it's like a helium balloon that's getting inflated and it's going bigger and bigger and bigger. And if it gets all the way to its max, it's going to pop. And that kind of is what I think everyone is afraid of. And that can start to bring you down this road of like, I really have to do something about all this pressure that I'm feeling. But the other thing to know about pressure that's really important to understand is sorting out exactly what kind of pressure you are experiencing. Because there are different types, and I'm going to share with you why I actually think pressure can be good. But just like when you're making food, like if you have a frozen meal and then you make the exact same homemade meal with the same ingredients, you are going to have a totally different experience and outcome, nutritional value of that meal. So we really want to understand and differentiate between the types of pressure and understand what is causing them. So that's really what we're going to get into today. And we're going to talk first about the kind of pressure that you probably were drawn to with this episode, the kind of pressure that feels the worst, that feels awful. It like sits on your chest. When you wake up in the morning, you really don't want to look at your calendar. You don't want to deal with anything that is on your list. This is the kind that makes you feel like you're not doing enough, the kind that makes you feel like your life, you're behind, you're not successful, you don't really know how to have a balanced life where you can prioritize yourself while also still succeeding and doing really well in your work and every other area of your life. After working with hundreds of Asian American women, I have found that they experience three particular types of pressure. And these types of pressure really are different from what other women experience. It's really based in culture and backgrounds. And I think it's really important that these conversations are had openly, that we start to understand so much more about the way we were raised and the reason we put so much pressure on ourselves. So, I'm going to share with you the three-part Asian pressure cycle. This cycle, when you really start to master it and you start to understand what's causing so much of the pressure, this is how you start to really get a little bit of that air out of the balloon. You stop feeling so intense about it. You start to be like, understand what is the cause of you feeling the way that you do. So let's dig into this. The first kind of pressure is the pressure from family. This one is a toughie because it's literally in the air you breathe and how you grew up. So when you grow up with Asian parents, this is, I don't like to generalize about Asia because it is such a giant place with so many cultures and so many countries. But the one thing that does really connect most Asian cultures is a dedication to the collective and to the whole. And it really also differentiates Asian cultures and countries from the United States. And so when you are growing up in an Asian culture, in a family, the collective is the value. The value is the family. The value is the whole. So the individual is not really part of that calibration. It's really around everything you're doing is a reflection upon that bigger picture of the family. And when you have parents who raise you that way, you don't necessarily think about it. It's just everywhere. It's in everything that you do. Family always comes first. And in this, this air that you're breathing of this family pressure, you should care about what the neighbors think. You should care if what you're doing reflects well or not upon your family. So this is reflected in how you are performing in school, the kind of college that you go to, the kind of career that you take. This is why so many Asian families pressure their kids to really follow the very traditional pathways of like being a doctor or a lawyer, make a lot of money, impress everybody, and be like really representative of your family in a way that makes them proud. And so when you start to make any decisions that are outside what they might consider, right? What your parents might consider good for the collective or the whole, then you start to feel stress and pressure to actually adhere to what they think you should do. And most of us learn to start to bucket in some ways, but when it really comes to like a deeper level of doing something for yourself, it can feel incredibly difficult. And I say this as someone who pivoted from journalism to yoga teaching and to entrepreneurship. And this is something too, like your parents may or may not express this. It really depends on your parents, the type of family you grew up with, but you can feel it. You can always know, like, I know that when I was pivoting to be a yoga teacher, I was really worried, like, what my parents would think. I thought they would really disapprove. I thought that they would be like, what are you doing? You're going to waste your life and throw it away on being a yoga teacher. And it was just constantly in the back of my mind. So, the more that you can understand that you grew up with this, and the more you can understand the particular version your family has, the more you can start to free yourself from this. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But just really, the first piece of it, the first step is understanding exactly where you are. It's just like if you're mapping yourself to go somewhere new, you have to know your starting point. You have to have that address, that first place. So, in this case, we're looking for that address of like, where am I located right now in terms of the kind of family pressure that I grew up with. So this leads me to our second place. And the second thing that we have to look at is pressure from society, right? Most of you are probably living in the United States, grew up in the United States, and the particular societal pressure here that just always says that you're not enough. It's like everywhere here too. It's in our water, it's in the air we breathe also. And it shows up in lots of different ways, like you're not skinny enough, you don't have the right body, you're not pretty enough, you're not good enough to do XYZ. There's a lot of marketing and a lot of things that are always telling us that we are not good enough to do the things that we want to do in the world. And when you start to really look at it and understand it, it's like kind of amazing how much it is all around us all the time. So just remembering that we also just live in a society and a place where there is a lot of pressure to be different than you are, right? And like where America is very much about remaking yourself and like being whoever you want to be. But if you don't know who you want to be, that itself is that not good enough pressure. Like, oh my gosh, I don't know who I am. I'm not living up to that dream, whatever it is. And so we have to really understand that we're already living in a culture and a society that puts so much pressure on women to be a certain way. Like you have to be the one who's working really hard and you're also the perfect mom, caretaking for your kids, and you're also a great partner and you look good while you're doing it. And it's like, wow, like none of us can live up to those standards. And so noticing that that's occurring all the time. And if you're spending a lot of time scrolling or on social media, you're probably feeling that even more intensely. Like I have to do things a certain way. And I see this so much with my clients. So notice and understand like, wow, there's just like a lot of stuff out in the air that's also telling you over and over again that you're not doing enough and you're not succeeding. And we want to release that pressure valve. It's just like when you have your foot on the gas on that one, you just wanted to take your foot off of it. And then this one leads me to the third one. And this one's a little bit insidious for most of us. And this is the pressure to fit in. And so there's already a societal pressure to be a certain way. And then now we're going to add in you being a person of color in the United States. And you're living in a white dominated society and you never really fit in. And you can't by the way that you look, the way that people would ask you questions like, what are you? Where are you really from? I've heard your English is so good, like many times when I was younger. And some of you might be like me, where you grew up in a really white community. And so then you are surrounded by this. Like you're trying to always be like what's happening in the world that you're growing up in. And you might have wanted blonde hair and blue eyes when you're a kid and been like, why is my nose the way it is? How come my eyes are the way they are? Why is my hair so straight? And you never really saw examples of Asians in media or culture, especially when you were younger. So now we have this new pressure, a different kind of pressure to be like everybody else, because that's also what happens when you're a kid. And you're also, now being raised by immigrant parents who have this like really work hard mentality. And so you're just like, okay, I'm working so hard, but it's not making any difference because it doesn't really make any difference in this particular realm. And also, we throw in the model minority myth where people are like, oh, well, like you're just quiet and successful. And so then you kind of go down that track. And then you're like, that's not actually working for me either. So, can you notice how all of these different parts of the Asian pressure cycle can really take you out? Like it just makes it so impossible for you to step into the version of yourself where you feel most connected, most purposeful, and most powerful. And so, what we want for all of you is to recognize first, like this identification we're going through right now is really important. I feel like, again, for a lot of Asian American women, like we just don't always recognize what we were raised with and how everything around us is causing us to put so much unnecessary pressure on ourselves. And when you can start to identify it and see it, and this is what I work on with my clients and understanding how it's impacting you on a daily basis, and to start to learn how to shake that off, to have a different experience, that's when they get free. They can be like, oh, wow, I can make a choice that serves me and still also works for my family. And I understand how to navigate the pressures in a totally different way than I ever have before. What we do when we're not really navigating them well is we get resentful, we get angry, we might hold a grudge or have a lot of shame if you're trying to do something that is outside what your family might expect. So we're always looking like, how do we start to shift this? Which leads me to talk about my controversial take on pressure is that pressure isn't always bad. It just depends on the type of pressure that we're talking about. So I'm a journalist, or I was a journalist. And so let's start there. Like we had deadlines and we had extreme deadlines sometimes. Like I have fully written stories in 30 minutes before, like 600, 800 words, super fast because you just had to. And I didn't want to, but I learned how to. And it taught me. And I really honestly, like, it's one of the lessons I'm so grateful for, a decade in journalism, but it just taught me that I can do more than I think I can. Like every time I had a story, I had all these notes, and my editors would be looking over my shoulder and like, Nicole, we need that story fast. And I'd be like, okay. And like, I would just like, sit down on my computer, get super focused and just slam that story out. But that's the kind of pressure we want to understand where it actually helps us. It helps us execute, it helps us thrive, it helps us grow. And so to me, we have to learn to differentiate between the types of pressure. There's the internal kind of pressure, which is to me the negative type, like the type where you're being hard on yourself, you're telling yourself you're not good enough, you're telling yourself you're never going to succeed, you're never going to get recognized, you're really criticizing yourself constantly, versus the kind that can be helpful. Like, I really love the pressure of accountability. It's the type of pressure that keeps me on track. Communities and people and leaders and mentors who support me to do the things that I know I'm here to do. And doing the things you're here to do, like some of you really care about really stepping into your purpose in a deeper way. And that does require some pressure because you're going to start doing things you've never done before. Like, I'm always telling my clients is like, we really have to navigate doing new things, because when you start to step into your purpose, you're going to start going outside the zone of things you know how to do. And that is a particular kind of pressure. And we have to learn how to bring in the correct things for ourselves, like community, like support, other people who've walked that pathway before us, so that we can learn to walk that pathway for ourselves. And that pressure, to me, pressure of growth is actually really powerful. I actually really love the power of pressure when it comes to helping me grow. And it's literally the only way we can transform. Like, look at a diamond, it turns from coal into a diamond because of pressure. So I don't ever want us to demonize pressure because it's not all bad. What we want to learn to do is to navigate the kind that's not serving you and then step into the kind that's going to make a difference and the kind that you actually want to embrace and take on for yourself. So the first step though really is to take the pressure off yourself around anything currently that you are doing that with. So that's the first place, because if you are putting pressure on yourself to do more at work, to work crazier hours, because that's the only way you're going to get recognized or get the promotion, or you're putting pressure on yourself to put the perfect party on for your kid, all of those things, those are the places we're wanting to. How do we start to release that pressure? How can we start to be like, wow, I'm holding myself to an unattainable standard, and that's making my life worse. And so, my first suggestion for that one, and this is a little simple two-step process, is just to do something to help yourself chill out, regulate your nervous system, go for a walk, take a yoga class, look outside, breathe some fresh air, just do something to help yourself ground. And then the second thing is to understand the type of pressure you're creating. Is this an internal pressure? Is it a pressure of growth, or is it a pressure of like, I have to perform, I have to do things a certain way, I have to meet a standard outside of myself, or a standard that I have that I might actually have just made up and is not real? So what kind of pressure are you putting on yourself? How can you start to release that pressure a little bit? And then you can start to be like, okay, now that I've taken that pressure off, that's when we can start to play. And that's where my clients go. Like, once we learn to really consistently take the pressure off, because this is not a one-time thing. Like, you might take it off after today's podcast episode, which is awesome, and probably tomorrow I might come back again. And so what I do with my clients is we consistently work over several months to learn how to keep that pressure off, the incorrect kind. And then we start to learn to navigate through it so that we can start to move in the direction of growth, of expansion, of purpose, and of power. So if you're wanting some support and the exact step by step for how to do this every single day, to really go deeper into understanding how to stop feeling being so hard on yourself, to stop that inner critic, and to really step forward into growth and expansion, and how to really do that consistently and purposefully in 2025, DM me powerful at Nicole Song on Instagram, and let's chat, because I really want to support you to step into the place that's going to make the biggest difference for you. Okay, friends, thank you so much for being part of this conversation today. If it resonated with you, please screenshot it, share it on Instagram stories, and tag me on there, or DM me, and let's talk about how we can make a difference for you. Okay, friends, we'll talk to you soon. See you next week.